Hello, everybody, and welcome today to our podcast. Our guest speaker is Ayhan. Ayhan, welcome.
Thanks, Altas. Thanks for having me.
Ayhan, we hear a lot today about cloud adoption, and we've got people on the security side who are trying to enable the business from a cloud adoption perspective. I guess the first thing is there's clearly a gap culturally. We're used to looking at security practitioners, we do things a certain way. Can you talk a little bit from your experience culturally how security practitioners might enable or accelerate cloud adoption within an organization?
Right. Altas, there is no doubt that agility, scalability, and cost optimization will continue to drive the cloud adoption. If there were any reluctance or concerns for some of the organizations so far, I think that the COVID-19 pandemic cleared the doubts. It reinforced the need for cloud adoption. Right now, cloud is a compelling priority for many organizations to run their business or support remote workers and maintain the business continuity, right? However, the adoption of cloud services by line of business leaders usually, and without a sound strategy and without a centralized approach, pose huge security concerns. We see many organizations have multiple cloud initiatives, each led by different departments. It's a total chaos. When these initiatives are not aligned with business goals, what happens, Altaz, is that the cloud approach will not scale, and data on the cloud will be subject to higher risks and exposure. At this point, security practitioners have greater responsibilities to help the business so that the business can adopt the cloud in a secure way.
Hmm.
What can they do? Well, many things. Altaz, you cannot drive a car where the wheels are not connected to the steering wheel. Security executives should be able to explain the security vision of the organization in the cloud domain to the board of directors and other senior executives. It is a must. They need to educate the executive team. The cloud is not a security challenge for the business. It is a security enabler. Once you have the high level vision established, then you need to work on a security strategy, right? That should define common guideline for the entire organization over there. It should align objectives, it should align benefits, risks, and key adoption criteria as well. And then once you have your cloud security strategy defined, then you need to establish a security roadmap that can support a secure cloud migration. The roadmap should include people, process, technology aspects of the cloud migration as well. At this point, security architecture plays an important role, right? Because they translate the business and assurance goals into documentation and the security architecture diagrams so that they can guide the technical security decisions. From people perspective, Altas, you need to educate teams about the cloud security journey. You need to develop the relevant skill set and capabilities within the workforce, right? Everyone should be aware of the threat landscape in the cloud, which is, by the way, is a quite kind of just different, right? They
Hmm.
need to understand the shared responsibility model and how it impacts the security. Also, the organizations need to kind of just shape up the cloud security roles, responsibilities, and accountabilities, right? Once you are done with the people perspective of the cloud adoption, you need to deal with the process, right? You need to modernize security process and practices. Security standards should include guidance specific to adoption of the cloud, such as secure use of cloud platforms, for example, or secure use of DevOps, and ensuring that assets are configured and secured properly. And once you shape the standards and procedures, then you improve the security practices. uh, there are lots of kind of just security practices over there, but maybe one of the most important practices is the threat modeling and security risk assessments, right? As you know, Altas, the cloud and DevOps practices demand agile threat modeling and
Hmm.
risk assessment practices, right? And for this reason, security practitioners need to ensure that they use an agile threat modeling and risk assessment methodology, where the duration of the risk assessments is not anymore the kind of just to the weeks or the months, but it should be kind of just accomplished within hours, right? And then from technology perspective, you need to select the right cloud security technology, and you need to educate the workforce on those technologies and their recommended configurations and the best practices, right? Just because you get to the technology will not kind of just sort of make your cloud journey safe. Even because we know that even simple misconfiguration issues represent significant risk.
Hmm.
And we did see that the evidences by several public data disclosures last year is the big ones. So practitioners need to be educated on applying and verifying cloud security configurations. Also, you need to analyze the security metrics to identify what is working and what is not working in your cloud journey as well, Altas.
Yeah. That's interesting. You've talked about so many different things, and it comes down to making sure that you're aimed in the right direction. You've been able to create alignment with what the business priorities are, and security ends up becoming an enabler to try and help transform as the organization is adopting the cloud as a part of their hybrid infrastructure at this point. Um, just some thoughts, Ayhan, from you on what are some of the common pitfalls that we see around security and cloud adoption? You've mentioned some of these things. There are governance aspects, there are things around training, for example. Um, if you had to say maybe the top three things that typically you see when organizations look at cloud adoption and they're missing some top things around security, what are some of those issues?
Right. Altas, moving to the cloud is similar to moving a standalone house into a high-rise luxury apartment building. In both places, you have your basic infrastructure like plumbing, electricity, and so on, right? Again, in both places, you perform similar activities such as cooking, watching TV, or one of my favorites, singing in the shower, or whatever your daily routine is, right?
Hmm.
However, there's a huge difference in what comes with the building. For example, in the luxury apartment building, most probably you will have a gym, elevators, cleaning services, I don't know, security services or swimming pool and so on, right? Where someone else is providing and maintaining them for your use.
Hmm.
And you share these services with the other tenants, and you need to adjust your routines accordingly so that you can live in harmony. And a common pitfall among organizations, Altas, that they begin their cloud journey and they think that, they believe that the current on-premises governance and management procedures are valid for cloud resources. They are not. Organizational culture changes is needed, right? Organizational leadership must drive an intentional culture change to make the security, cloud security, a priority for each member of the organization. Security development and operations roles should contribute key elements into a shared culture, shared values, and shared goals and shared accountabilities. And unfortunately, if they don't support and if they don't provide this, right, then the cloud adoption and cloud kind of just to the culture will not be there, and it's just not going to be successful, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Another pitfall that I see the practitioners, the security practitioners as well. Practitioners make the daily work of information security happen, right? You don't change the security culture without them. However, what I see more and more, practitioners are kind of just being treated as a passive targets of transformational efforts, right? These stakeholders are perhaps best positioned to understand and explore security culture because they live it every day, every single day, right? And any cultural transformation, be it a cloud or DevOps, whatever, is highly unlikely to succeed unless you kind of just deliberately include them, right? And this is one of the kind of just sort of pitfalls that I see that this is not happening,
Mm.
more and
That's
more.
interesting. And then as we, as organizations begin to move into the cloud, having these guardrails in place to guide us and ensure that we are staying on track becomes an important part of governing this whole program to get us into the cloud. We've got a lot of movement in DevOps and CI/CD pipelines today to even deploy to these hybrid infrastructures. In your opinion, as we look at both enabling security and at the same time not discounting the fact that we still need to move fast and looking at trying to create a balance between speed and security, do you have any thoughts on the kinds of metrics that perhaps we should be considering as we move to a sort of this hybrid infrastructure, as we adopt the cloud now? Does anything change from a metric standpoint as it pertains to security?
Right. Although when we look at the cloud and DevOps practices, we see that they are founded on automation for continuous integration, continuous delivery, and deployment. And one of their main characteristics is speed. Speed is a great asset, but it is even greater when it's balanced with the safety and security. And
Mhm.
think about it, Altas. If you are going into the wrong direction, speed would be irrelevant, right? So we need to create the right balance between speed and risk so that we can avoid costly business interruptions, such as data breaches. So we cannot successfully change or manage something that we cannot define, assess, or measure, right? It's extremely important to measure security activities and to publish meaningful security metrics. And yes, there are kind of quite useful metrics that I can recommend to the organizations. One of them is the deployment time. How long does it take to roll out deployments? As you know that the faster you can deploy each release, then the closer you come to continuous delivery. While short deployment time is as important and desirable, but it shouldn't come at the cost of accuracy or security risk. The security team can help minimize deployment time by automating, for example, their security review process. This is a very useful metric that shows how well shifting security to the left is accomplished, so that security issues are identified earlier in the pipeline when they are typically easier, faster, and cheaper to resolve. Another metric that I find useful is number of security defects identified and fixed before production deployment. And this metric ensures a lower risk that post-deployment security issues will trigger either a rollback or cause a serious risk to the organization, such as data breaches due to the vulnerabilities, right? Another useful metric is vulnerability escape rate, right? Each and every software deployment, as we know, that can create new defects. These might not be discovered, unfortunately, until acceptance testing, or worse yet, they could be found by the end user, right? The vulnerability escape rate tracks how often defects are uncovered in the production. This metric also can provide a valuable information of the overarching quality of the releases and whether there is a balanced approach between security and the speed is being practiced, Altas. There
Mm.
are many other metrics, such as security policy and compliance adherence rate, from configuration perspective, configuration compliance tracking rate, from patch management perspective, the patch management related number of unpatched critical vulnerabilities, or from change management perspective, number of change control violations, incident management related number of incidents and cost of incidents. There are tons of kind of just to do, the metrics. Some of the metrics are kind of just not innate to the cloud, but some of them are. But the most important thing is to select what makes most sense for an organization and measure the progress to ensure that security is supporting and enabling the business goals. This also shows us whether any improvements or modifications in your security approach is required as well. Altas.
Wonderful. That's great. Ayhan, thank you very much for your time today. Folks, once again, our guest speaker today was Ayhan from Cyber Electra. Thank you, Ayhan.
Thank you, Altas.